thank you for attending Oxford Against Cutting's next web cafe. We're really pleased to have a guest, which I'll introduce in a moment. We're just going to go through some housekeeping stuff first of all, and Dot will do that.
Thank you, Sobia. Okay, so please don't name anybody if you choose to talk about a harmful practice that's affected or might affect someone you know. We encourage you to get support for families affected by harmful practices, but please contact Elaine Savage privately if you have any safeguarding concerns today. So Elaine's contact details I've put in the chat box, and Elaine is an independent sexual violence advisor for Victims First Specialist Service. So if anyone was to be, and this has never happened before, disrespectful towards anyone else in the call today, then I would take them out the Zoom call, so just to let you know. And finally, we're going to be recording the first part of the session today with our guest speaker, but we will stop the recording afterwards to allow people who might not have wanted to be recorded to ask questions. Cool, thank you. Over to you, Sobia.
Thank you. So my name is Sobia Afridi, and I'm a facilitator for Oxford Against Cutting, and been working here for quite a few years now. And I'm very privileged to have Sahar Zand with me today, talking about virginity testing and hypoplasmy. I find it's difficult to say that word, so forgive me. So Sahar is an award-winning British-Iranian journalist and a filmmaker. She's reported on the diverse range of topics, including human rights abuse and gender issues. Honor-based abuses issues are particularly close to Sahar's heart, as she's helped raise awareness of the harms caused by virginity testing through her ITV exposure film, Britain's Virginity Clinics Uncovered, which some of you might be surprised by. Sahar will be showing some of her clips of her films today. So the idea is that Sahar shows the films, we have a few questions, and we bring it out to the audience to speak on this. So over to you, Sahar.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and being here today. And thank you to Oxford Against Cutting for inviting me to be a part of the very important work that they're doing. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here, especially because today is the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. And that's actually a big part of what my talk today is going to be about. So I'm first going to start with a few things that I regularly heard growing up. A woman who is not a virgin is worth nothing. She might as well. She's better off dead. If a girl is found not to be a virgin on the wedding night, she deserves to die. Shut your legs when you sit. Don't laugh too loud. Cover your hair and body so that you don't tempt men. Honestly, the list goes on, and they're all horrible, misogynistic, oppressive sentiments, which me and hundreds of thousands of other girls around the world hear regularly to this day. I was born and brought up in the Islamic Republic of Iran, a country where oppressive system of honor ruled our lives, socially, politically, religiously, in every sense. The controls had no limits, and it penetrated into every aspect of our life, even into our bedrooms. In my country of origin, women are second-class citizens. They have almost no rights when it comes to divorce, custody of children, and even travel. I mean, think about it. They also have no legal protection against domestic violence and sexual harassment, whilst also being banned from singing in public, having sex outside of marriage, or even showing more than their face or hands in public. Breaking some of these rules is actually punishable by execution, by stoning. I was brought up in that environment. I remember hearing the word virginity and hymen long before I was even old enough to know what sex is, which goes to show the significance of the role of virginity and the value that is placed on women. It's as if, as girls, we're born with the sole purpose of being a product, like a piece of meat, to eventually be exchanged to the family of our husbands, or, you know, the person that our family chooses to give us to. And our worth, essentially, as girls, depends on our virginity, on, you know, quote unquote, purity. I was told by my own mother from a very young age that girls are like tissue, you know. I remember her saying, you know, you never use a tissue twice. You blow your nose in it and then you chuck it. And girls are like tissues. If you don't want to be used and abused by boys, you know, meaning having sex with them, you know, they will just use you and then throw you away like a tissue. So if you don't want to be like a useless tissue, you know, don't break the rules. So in order to protect my virginity, my hymen, we had to basically abide by many unwritten rules. For example, I wasn't allowed to even wear a tampon or do things like riding a bike or horse riding. And let me tell you, I actually had it good because my parents weren't that strict or that traditional, but there were so many girls in our society that had so many other restrictions placed on them. Some of them weren't even allowed to run or, you know, do certain stretches or play certain sports. I thought that these restrictions were only limited to Iran. I thought that, you know, it's only in this country that these things happen. So at the age of 12, when I realized that along with my mom and 4-year-old sister, we were escaping the country due to my father's political persecution, which is a whole other story. I was sad because, you know, we were going to be stateless, homeless. I didn't know where we were going to go. But to be honest, deep down inside, I was actually relieved. I was like, finally, we're escaping these restrictions, this oppression, this misogynistic way of being. I can finally be a person. But boy, was I wrong. We ended up in several different refugee camps across different countries in Europe. And that's when it dawned on me that these pressures on women and the value of virginity isn't restricted to just Iran. I saw girls from, you know, Kurdish girls from, you know, various Middle Eastern countries, various African countries, Latin American, Eastern Europe, Jewish girls. And I realized that all of these are having to live with similar restrictions. And for all of them, it's like a unwritten universal rule that virginity plays this huge role. And then when I was around 15 years old, we eventually came to the UK. And I remember when we were on our way here, I was so happy because I thought, you know, this is a land that has a reputation as a country of tolerance. So surely I wouldn't have to live with these oppressive systems, these pressures around honor anymore. And oh my God, was I wrong. I remember going to school here and I saw so many different issues and so many similar rhetorics being repeated over and over again. And that's when I realized these things are, especially pressures on girls, especially when it comes to honor and virginity is on top of that list. It's international. It doesn't know any geography, doesn't have borders. It affects everyone everywhere. It affects all the girls. So years later, I decided to make a documentary. I'm going to show you a part of the film now, just because for many of us, we may not realize how present this issue is in this country, because it's affecting women who often tend to not be allowed to have a voice. We don't hear from them. They're hidden away. And just because we don't hear about it on the news or, you know, it's not discussed in the mainstream because of the oversensitivity on political correctness, or, you know, the fact that these girls are just, you know, them speaking out means risking their lives. We don't really hear much about them. So I'm going to show you a clip from my film just to be able to really demonstrate the extent and type of this issue in this country. I need to share my screen. Okay, is it shared? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, over the last 6 months, I've been speaking to women from communities across the UK, from Orthodox Jewish to Kurdish Muslim, whose lives are ruled by the same strict notions of honor and purity that mine was.
You can't wear a dress that's too short because men will look at you. I wasn't even allowed to participate in sports.
To draw any attention to yourself.
We wasn't allowed to have male friend.
It's almost like you're living in a prison. You're constantly monitored. These ideas cross religious divides, but charities in this field say the majority of women coming forward are from conservative Muslim communities, and that notions of honor are often seen as the root cause of these pressures.
Honor is an intrinsic value. Honor is not just to be respected, but it must be seen to be respected. It's a public commodity.
One of the greatest transgressions of honor is considered to be sex outside marriage.
Preserving my chastity is more important than anything else in the world. If I go and have sex with somebody else, I'm being dishonorable. There are specific rules in Islam that we're not allowed to break.
And what happens to those who don't follow these strict rules?
If you break them, you become a sinner. In Islam, you have to accept the whole. Islam is not a pick and mix religion. You can't pick one and reject the other.
So that was a part of my film, just to be able to really demonstrate what is happening here, especially why honor is so important and its links to virginity. So age 32, when I was in the process of making this documentary for ITV, I finally sat down with my mom all these years later. And let me tell you, my mom is honestly like one of the strongest, most supportive, most open-minded people I know. And it was really hurtful when she told me that I was like a tissue. So I finally confronted her. You know, I was like, why did you push this misogynistic notions on me? Why did you tell me that as a girl, my value was essentially dependent on my virginity? Why did you force all these restrictions on me when we were back in Iran? So instead of me telling you what she said, I'm actually going to play you a clip of that conversation with my mom.
But perfect. Oh. We both escaped from Iran when I was 11 years old.
Oh, do you remember that night?
Yeah. I wanted to talk to her about this obsession with virginity. You used to say, a girl is like a tissue. Men, boys will want to use you. Once you use a tissue, you throw it away. You don't go and reuse it. Why did you used to say that to me?
I just wanted to protecting you. I've seen many people destroy their life because the girl wasn't virgin.
But that's not the same for men.
No. They're free to have sex with anyone, but their wife should be virgin.
That was a very small part of a very long conversation I had with my mom. Obviously, in a film, you only have a very small time to only just get to the gist of the issue. But essentially, what my mom made me realize was quite surprising. She made me realize that she didn't believe the things she was preaching, but she herself was a victim of that system. Just as any other mother who loves their child wants. She wanted the best for me. She wanted me to thrive. Actually, forget thriving. She wanted me to survive in a society that expected me to abide by certain rules. She knew that as a girl, my value, my worth would be dependent on my virginity, of that if I wasn't a virgin in that country, I could get killed. So she was only trying to protect me, and it must have really hurt her. She was taught those things and she was passing them on to me just to be able to protect me. And that's really heavy. And the same woman who did that, she actually helped me with all of the undercover filming in my documentary for ITV, which helped us expose the extent of the issue in this country. And that goes to show, if a woman, someone like my mom who told me those things, if she's able to be in a society where she has rights, where she's allowed to be herself, where she, doesn't have to fear for her life or my life for not pushing misogynistic views on us, then look at what she can achieve, look at what she can do for not just herself, but for others. So in many communities, even here in the UK, like I keep saying, honor is the most important thing. And not following its strict rules can have serious consequences. Now, to show you some of those serious consequences, I'm going to play you another part of my film, which I believe really helps demonstrate the problem.
I'm on my way to meet someone who, for bravely taking a stand against honor-based abuse, will forever have to look over her shoulder. Hazy Mahmoud grew up in London within a strict family in a conservative Kurdish community.
I used to take my trousers in, and my parents used to always say, "We didn't buy you those," and I would say, "Yes, you did," or that they shrunk in the wash.
Her family's determination to uphold their supposed honor has had devastating consequences. Nearly 16 years ago, Paizi's sister Banaz was murdered by her own father and 4 others. Her crime? Leaving an abusive child marriage and being seen with a new boyfriend. It was one of the most shocking honor cases this country has ever witnessed.
I can't quite comprehend how she lost her life for wanting a life.
It's fear of repercussions like this that prevents so many women from speaking out. But Paizi will not be silenced. She's decided to talk openly on camera for the first time about her own traumatic experiences around virginity.
It's what you've been prepared for pretty much throughout your life. You're constantly told about saving yourself for that one man and, keeping yourself for marriage.
The moment Paizi had been prepared for came when she turned 16. Twice her age, the man she says her parents were forcing her to marry was a stranger to her.
Tell me about the night of your wedding. It was so scary because this is a complete stranger. This could literally be someone that I just saw in the street and is now in a room with me on my own. And I remember just like flinching and removing my hand. And he sort of took that really personally. And at that point, he like shouting and, insulting me. And he threw some bedding at me. And then he went to, there was a... Can we take a break?
Paizi's new husband returned her to her parents the morning after the wedding.
They were just horrified because the first thing they assumed was that there was something wrong with me for him to have taken me back.
Paizi was given a white sheet, one of the oldest forms of virginity testing. That night, after having sex with her husband, she bled on the sheet. Her parents kept it as proof of her purity.
I'm supposed to have been proud and felt like I passed the test, but no, I felt ashamed, a really terrible moment, if anything.
For 2 years, Paizi says she was trapped in the abusive marriage.
Just every day into the 2 years, I grew more and more bitter and angry inside and unhappy because it was never my choice.
The white sheet practice, the idea that blood on a sheet proves a bride's virginity, still happens around the world today. It's even celebrated on social media. But research suggests around half of women will not bleed the first time they have sex. Those that don't can be at risk of unabased abuse. That's any crime motivated by the desire to protect the family or community's honor.
I mean, Paisley is absolutely one of my favorite people. She's been campaigning tirelessly, telling and retelling this horrific story of herself and her sisters. And, you know, the work that campaigners like Paisley, you know, charities like Oxford Against Cutting do is so important, because it's important to continue having these conversations, because it's knowledge that can lead to real change. Because there are so many ways of creating change. You can ban things, you can, you know, force people to be certain ways, you can judge them. But at the end of the day, to really stop honor-based abuse, which is so complex and deeply rooted, you need to do it by the hard work and persistence of people like Paisley talking and raising awareness, essentially, because that's the only way we can start seeing real change long term. This is a long fight. So, as I was saying, when we came to the UK, I realized that, you know, this issue goes on here, maybe not as widespread or as obvious and accepted as I saw in Iran or in the refugee camps, but it's very much here. And sometimes it's even more dangerous that it goes on behind closed doors. I remember in school, there were so many girls that were so scared about, you know, being found not to have a hymen. You know, especially a lot of my Asian friends, my Jewish friends, they were so terrified. They were like, you know, this new trend had emerged where parents could take their daughters to get a virginity certificate, like for 200, 300 pounds. They could take them to a gynecologist, especially gynecologists in Harley Street, and get a virginity certificate to say, yes, this girl is a virgin or she's not. And as I said in the part of the film that I played for you, half the girls don't bleed. A lot of the girls don't even have a hymen. Hymens come in different shapes and forms. Sometimes the hymen can get torn in so many different ways. So like a hymen is not an indication of virginity. Yet these clinics were providing certificates to prove these girls' virginities. And if the girls weren't able to prove their purity, they could be facing what Paisley faced. They could be facing what Banaz Mahmoud faced. They could lose their lives. So it's just really, really scary. And I remember hearing whispers about aunties or, you know, these underground clinics that can sew you up, that can actually, you know, check whether or not your hymen is intact. And if it's not, they can do it up for you just so that you don't get in trouble. This always stuck with me. I thought it was disgusting. The fact that instead of thinking about what they want to do when they grow up, what sort of person they want to be, what they want to study, what kind of a role they want to play in the society, these girls had to worry about whether or not, you know, their life is secure just because of something they have no control over. It was just bizarre. Anyway, I grew up, went to uni, became a journalist. My specialty is investigating underreported stories. And for my work, I travel around the world. You know, I've made films in various African countries, in the Middle East, Latin America, Eastern Europe. And every film, pretty much, I cover, especially the ones that in one way or another include women's rights or violence against women. This subject of virginity and hymen always comes up. And because there is all this shame and stigma around it, people don't really speak about it, but it's always there when you really dwell deep enough. So about 4 years ago, I finally decided to make a film. Now, when I first want to make a film, what I have to do is to do extensive research to find all the data available, all the information available on the topic. And there was hardly anything, even though I knew that virginity testing was legal in this country. Hymenoplasty, which is the sewing of the hymen, is legal in this country and it's happening. There was nothing. And I know that there is an estimated 12 people, most of them women, per year getting murdered in honor-based abuse and violence in the UK. 12 people, mostly women, murdered every year in the UK for honor-based violence. There was hardly any proper statistics or information on it. So it was a very, very difficult investigation. I had to start from scratch. I had to literally call every single honor-based abuse charity in the UK. I had to talk to so many people. The investigation took me 3 years. And my findings were even more horrifying than my wildest dreams. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea it was as bad as it was. I'm going to play you another part of my film.
There's a growing industry making money from some of the most vulnerable people in Britain. Women and girls forced to prove they're virgins.
He told me, like, I spread my legs. He said he's going to put gently his fingers inside to check on something. She said, I'm having a virginity test.
Made to undergo harmful operations just to pretend they haven't had sex.
Inspected me and confirmed that I wasn't a virgin. And then they said, okay, now we're going to stitch you up. And the fact that they are making money out of it is disgusting. It's disgusting.
This is a story of clinics selling unscientific tests for cash.
If she is virgin, the doctor is going to write the report clearly that she is a virgin.
Of invasive procedures carried out in the name of so-called honor.
Baby, hold on. Okay, this is a little mini panic attack.
Even as these operations face a potential ban, we find a doctor who says he would be willing to lie to continue.
We have to lie. We have to say we're doing something else.
It's a story of the fear that's driving women to Britain's virginity clinics.
For stepping out of line, for not following the rules, you could lose your life.
Is the screen still being shared? No, okay, cool. So as I said, a lot of the women who are impacted by this issue often don't have a platform to speak for themselves. They're usually spoken for, or, you know, they become a stat at the best of time. So I was adamant to find these girls and give them a platform to speak for themselves, to tell their own stories, to take ownership of what happened to them. So I didn't want to speak for them or about them. I wanted them to speak about themselves. And that was so difficult. I mean, a lot of them, finding them was one thing, which was really hard. But then the ones that we did find, they were so terrified from the repercussions of speaking against their communities or sharing what happened to them, bringing shame to their family. A lot of them were still on the run. A lot of them were hiding from their husbands, from their dads, from their brothers. And that only goes to show how serious the impact and the threat of breaking those rules are. I'm going to play you the last clip from my film that I wanted to share with you, just so that one of these girls can, again, tell her own story. Because even though I had an experience, it really is nothing in comparison to what these girls went through. I was lucky because my parents were supportive. They were only trying to protect me in the country of Iran. But once we came out, they allowed me to be who I am. And they sort of, you know, saw how things are here and they kind of went with the flow. But most other girls, a lot of the girls I spoke to, especially in this film, they never had that privilege. I'll let her tell her own story. This is Beza, which is not her real name.
For now, hymenoplasty is still legal in the UK. Though many campaigners are trying to get it banned, others fear that doing so will simply push the procedure to backstreet clinics, putting women further at risk. But I've met one woman who told me she'd had the surgery done at a pharmacy. we're hiding her identity. Beyza grew up in a Muslim community in London. She says the importance of being a virgin had been drilled into her from an early age.
If you are not a virgin, you're not clean, you're deemed as a whore, you're deemed as dirty.
Despite her family's attitude, she decided to have sex with her boyfriend.
Just because I'm not a virgin doesn't make me a bad person, doesn't make me a prostitute or a whore. So I think for a long time, I would say I probably felt empowered, that, you know, I felt a little bit brave that I've done this.
Beyza's parents began to suspect she might not be a virgin. She says her mother repeatedly questioned her about it and eventually booked a virginity test at a pharmacy.
That's when my world came crumbling down, because I was like, I am basically screwed now. For a good while, I went completely numb. I was really scared. I was shitting myself. I was so scared, because I was like, it's all going to be revealed now, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Feeling desperate, Beyza says she admitted to her mother she wasn't a virgin.
She said to me, well, if that's the case, we will get you inspected first, then we'll stitch you up. I was really scared, because I was like, what the hell is going to happen to me? You know, why am I being stitched up?
Beyza says she told her mother she didn't want the procedure, but her parents threatened to disown her if she didn't go through with it. The doctor at the pharmacy performed a virginity test, followed by hymen repair surgery on the same day.
Obviously told me to take my clothes off. My mum came in with me, and then laid me down, put my legs up, inspected me, confirmed that I wasn't a virgin. And then they said, okay, no, we're going to stitch you up. They gave me a local anesthetic. I just started to cry because it felt horrible, it felt uncomfortable. And part of me felt, this is more shameful than me not being a virgin. So why are you allowing this man, this person that I don't know, examine me and touch me, and I don't want this done?
The clinics offering these services say the operations can protect women at risk of honor abuse and, as their cosmetic, are freely chosen. But Beyza, for whom hymen repair wasn't a choice, feels strongly that it should be banned.
How is testing them, how is stitching these girls up to finding who they are? It's morally wrong. It needs to stop. And the fact that they are making money out of it is disgusting. It's disgusting. They want to claim they're doing it for you and that they're doing you a favor. We're trying to protect your dignity, your value. But no, they don't want it to come out that you're not a virgin. They want to keep their own dignity, their reputation protected. They're doing it for themselves.
And there you have it. You know, it's never about the girls. It's about the families trying to protect their own reputation within their communities. And for that, they are happy to put their own children under extreme trauma and sometimes even worse. I'm proud to say that after the broadcast of this film, it was shown in the Parliament and it was used as an evidence by very hardworking campaigners who've been campaigning for years for the practice to be banned. And after the broadcast of my film and the evidence we were able to present, they finally banned both hymenoplasty and virginity testing in the UK. But that is not the end of the problem. It's only a step. It's only a step in the right direction, and it's only a start. Because by banning this practice, you're not stopping people who wanted their daughters to be virgins, the husbands who expect their wives to be virgins. You're not changing the belief that put these girls in this situation in the first place. Yes, the ban sends a strong message that this is wrong, that there will be action if anyone's found to be breaking it. But there are clinics who are doing this on the ground. And, you know, FGM was banned almost 2 decades ago. There's been hardly any prosecution against FGM. And we know that's still happening to this day, a lot. So I think that's what makes having conversations like the one we're having today, you showing up today, and the work that Oxford Against Cutting is doing so important, because we need to continue having these conversations. We need to remember that these problems exist, and we need to spread the word. And it's only through a holistic approach and constantly talking about this and educating people and telling girls about their rights that we can really finally, maybe eventually, choose end this kind of violence. Now, before I wrap my talk up, I just wanted to go back to myself. So I did eventually lose my virginity to a man I choose, the way I chose, where I chose. No one judged me for it. No one punished me for it. No one made me feel ashamed or made me want to escape. And it was brilliant. It was liberating. And, you know, most importantly, I practice one of the most fundamental human rights, freedom of choice, especially over my own body, especially over what I do with myself. And I really hope that one day, every single girl, every single woman, actually, every single human in the world can have the same right, can enjoy the same privilege. And this shouldn't be a privilege. This is a right. So by just being here today, I'm going to repeat myself. You're all being a part of this solution. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sahar, and thank you for showing the clips of your movies, films. I was just going to say that we do probably have survivors on this call, and I personally found, and I saw the films yesterday, they are very hard to watch. So if somebody wants to take a minute, I totally understand that, but we do tend to have a lot of survivors on the call. So just to say, I acknowledge that, and I find it quite emotional and hard to watch some of the girls talking about their experience, but they need to have their voices. So thank you very much, Sahar, for that. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions right now at the moment?
Ba-da-bum-bum-bum, ba-da-bum-bum, ba-da-bum-bum-bum.